gunshots were raining in quick succession. Remember, the bandits were like above them a little bit on the hills, and these guys were down in the valley. So they were just aiming at them, killing one by one.
Ndo sasa wakaendelea kutupiga, wakatusurround. After kutusurround sasa ikakuwa mob.
Kasarani is a valley. Where you are seeing this lorry is a valley. A valley. One entry, one exit. Ukiingia, kwisha. On the 31st of October 2014, 21 police officers were massacred in Capado by armed bandits. It was the second heaviest loss of police officers Kenya had ever experienced, and especially in the hands of armed bandits. And that is what we are going to talk about today. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kenyan Historian, and today I'm coming to you from the serenity of Magadi. This is Lake Magadi. As you can see there, those are flamingos, and far there, that is Tata Chemicals, the company that mines soda ash from Lake Magadi. But I want to talk about these pictures you're seeing here. This one is me, and this one is Robert Gishira. And this, you can see, is Michael Njenga, then of Citizen TV. 21 police officers had been massacred in Capado. And my boss told me, by the way, you are going to Capado. Actually, I was only like 2 years old in the newsroom. So my experience, let me say, I wasn't that an experienced reporter. But nikaambiwa, my friend, unaenda huko. So that day was a gloomy day in the country, I can tell you, because losing 21 police officers is not a joke. And everyone was fuming, from the President Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember, he was just one year and some few months in office, and 21 police officers had been massacred just like that in Capado.
Mungu awabariki, silaha na hawa watu mimi nawahitaji.
So tukatoka Robert Gishira, who was the cameraman that was assigned to me. Then there was Bundi of QTV then. And then there was Vincent Odwor of QTV. So tukatoka Nakuru ndio wale tukafika sasa ukipita pale ufika Marigat. Now ukifika Marigat, we have to go to a place called Chemolingot. Chemolingot is where now you branch. So when we hit the road from Chemolingot to Capado is when now the reality starts to dawn on me that actually this is real, because now we were encountering police vans, police lorries all over. These are armed officers who had been killed by bandits, ambushed in Capado in a place called Kasarani. So there was a heavy deployment. Remember, Uhuru Kenyatta, who was the president, was fuming. And it was about time to, and actually he really wanted to deal with the issue of banditry at that time.
Na mimi nashukuru wazee wanasema niwapatie wiki mbili watarudisha hizo silaha walichukua. Na najua nia yao ni njema, lakini nataka niseme hivi. Mimi silaha hizo ambazo zilichukuliwa kutoka hawa askari, mimi sitaki kungojea wiki mbili, nataka zirudishwe leo. Lazima mnajua wako wapi.
We got the shots of police officers, police caravans, and we went to, all of a sudden then we hit Capado Center. Capado Center is a beautiful place. beautiful place because there is a waterfall just behind it that comes from Silale Hills. And this waterfall is not made up of cold water, it's hot water. Hot water that comes from Silale. Silale kana kuanga nika area kako sasa kamlima, Silale Hills. On top you could see the hills, but that water, you can imagine the water travels more than a kilometer, and still by the time it's hitting the falls, it's still very hot. You can't even, let me say, stand by the falls and shower. Very hot. So you can imagine, and even there you can still see the generators that were used by the Europeans to tap water, to tap electricity from the water. They are still there, but not in a good condition. They no longer work. So it is a geothermal, what should I say? Is a geothermal heaven. And I know the GDC, which is the Geothermal Development Corporation or company, has been drilling wells around Silale Hills to tap into this water. So Kapedo is a very beautiful place. The inhabitants of Kapedo are Turkana, the people from the Turkana community. But the reason why Kapedo is always in the news because of conflict is because Kapedo Center is surrounded by areas occupied by the Pokot community. So if you're coming from Marigat and you're going to Kapedo, you must pass through the Pokot community. If you are heading to the sides of Turkana, past Loruk, you pass through the Pokot community. So it's like they are surrounded by the Pokot.
Maisha yetu ni hivi. Usongi hatua, kuingia ni shida, kutoka ni shida.
I remember we told the first story that is at 1 p.m. We did our stories there. We did some live broadcasts, and I remember I asked Vincent Odwar, and yes, we've done the story, we've highlighted, but the only pictures we are showing people, police officers, police vans, police lorries, going to Kapedo and leaving Kapedo. So I asked Vincent Odwar, so how can we get the picture of the exact place of the attack, where the police officers were murdered and the vans, for example? Now, Nekambia Vincent Odwar, you know one thing, bandits do not attack journalists. They can't. I told him it was a way of encouraging you that we need to go. So I remember when we decided to go, you know, there is a police barrier there, and the APs were sitting there, and they asked us, Munaenda wapi? And I told them we are going to try and see if we can get the pictures of the crime scene. The police officers told us, first of all, it's far. It's almost 20 kilometers from the center. Number 2 is just a valley. Number 3, you will be alone because as we are not giving you escort. Number 4 is like you are taking yourself into a slaughterhouse. Hey, by the way, tukafikiria. Tukasema, we, hapa, hii yenye polisi wameogopa kwenda. Hii yenye polisi wanasema kwenda huko ni kama slaughterhouse. Sasa sisi tunaenda na tuko tu na nini? The only thing that we are carrying that looks like protection is the helmet and the bulletproof vest. But I remember at that time kuna msee alikuwa ametuonya when we were leaving Nairobi. Someone had said, remember we are going to a bandit zone and you are carrying these things, the bandits will come for them. Atawata kujia hizi helmet na kujia hizi bulletproof vest. So hiyo time ya kuamua nikakumbuka hiyo kitu. Nikaambia Vincent, mimi nataka tuende, lakini jua kwamba bandits wakituana na hizi vitu watakujia. So we should be ready for anything. So tukaamua kwenda forward. Kwa tunaenda tukakutana na Michael Njenga, naye ameenda anarudi. So Njenga alikuwa amejaribu kwenda, Michael Njenga he tried to go, but akafika barabarani, I think akaona hafiki, then he decided to come back. Njenga was then reporting for Citizen TV. I was reporting for NTV. So tukaenda tukakutana, wakati tukutana Njenga, tukaambia Njenga, akasema mimi nimejaribu kwenda ni kama hatufiki. Nikasema twende tu. Kwa sababu wamesema ni mbali, lakini twende. Njenga ndio huyo akapendua gari. Tukaamua kwenda. I think alikuwa na Patrick Njendi, if I'm not wrong. Patrick Njendi was reporting for the now Citizen Nipashe. Njenga was reporting for Citizen Live at 9. So jamani, hawa vumbi inaamuka. Unajua niko valley hivi my friend. Ushaenda, you are going. The only things you are seeing are bush, shrubs, dry river beds. You are crossing, and then I remember someone, some guy from World Vision had told me that bandits usually attack in the dry river beds. They call them the laga. Nasema ukiwa kwa laga pale, jamaa anajificha kwa mawe na akiwa na bunduki hivi. So wewe unaona mawe, lakini kuna jamaa amelala kwa mawe pale. Si ndio hao tunaenda tu fast, tukapata hii picha.
Leo nini?
Hii picha unaona hapa. Hii van like ikiwa imebebwa, hii imechomwa. Now this is what led to the burning or the killing of the 21 police officers. This van here had, or the police, 3 police officers had been killed previously. They were from the General Service Unit. They were transporting papers. Remember, it was during examination time. So they were transporting papers in Turkana County. And they were ambushed by bandits from the Pokot community. So the bandits attacked them, killed them, and they burned the vehicle, as you can see. This van here is what the 21 police officers were going to recover. During the attack, 3 police officers were killed. They were from the General Service Unit. So tukafika hapa, tukashuka. Unajua the journalist picha ni muhimu sana, because that's the only way you can prove to people what really happened. That is the only way you can tell a story on TV and say and show the magnitude of the attack. Remember, hiyo yote, we wanted to show people what was really happening and how bad the attack was. Tukafika hapa, tukapiga picha nini. Unajua tungepindukia hapa. Tukajiuliza maswali, tuendelee ama tusiendelee. Tukasema this is not where the 21 police officers had been killed, and the story we were doing was the killing of the 21 police officers by bandits. So tukafaya. Unajua tukiona van tukasema labda hiyo ingine iko tu hapa karibu. Lakini bado tukasonga. Unajua ni vumbi, the terrain is tough, you are not moving. You see ati tuna move at 100 kilometers per hour. I think ilikuwa 40, 30, but vumbi ile inaamuka, unaweza fikiria these guys are moving very fast. You might think we were moving at 100 kilometers per hour plus. So unaona, that is the valley, the Kasaran Valley. Now tukasema lazima hiyo picha ya lori tupate. Tena ndio wale mbio. Hiyo mbio nisiseme mbio ukafikiria we are doing 100 kilometers per hour. We are only doing 20 to 30 as I told you. Tukaenda ghafla Bedvu. Ndio hile pale. The truck, the police lorry, burned like nonsense. Husks all over, and cartridges. It was sad. I still remember that picture. It was bad.
This is the area where the bandits ambushed them. Going by the evidence we found here, there are cartridges all over. We have ammo boxes or ammunition boxes strewn all over. This is a clear indication that the kind of attack that was going on here on that day is something that many will not want to remember.
Bullet holes dotting the entire lorry, bullet holes. So I just started to imagine, wow, what really happened there. Seeing that lorry, you could see the horror that happened. It was sad.
After kusurround sasa ikakuwa mob.
This guy here survived. But how did it happen? How did the bandits just massacre 21 police officers? Just like that. As I told you, Kasarani is a valley. Where you are seeing this lorry is a valley. A valley. One entry, one exit. Ukiingia, kwisha. So this was an ambush. There were bandits. They surrounded. It's like they knew these guys were coming. And they let them in. Doing nothing. Just left the cops come in. And when they reached, it's called the target area. That place is where they wanted the police to go. It's like the police went where the bandits wanted them to be. So bullets started coming in. First of all, they hit the driver. Bah! Once you hit the driver, it means the vehicle cannot move. They hit the tires. And there is one rule when you are in those areas, in the bandit zone. Because at the end of it all, they end up burning vehicles. They don't leave them like that. So there is one rule. When you hear a bullet, they say use the shortest time possible to leave the vehicle. Use the shortest time possible. But remember, this vehicle was full of over 20 soldiers, police officers. Over 20 police officers. So they say use few seconds to leave. And hear what this guy said.
Tulikuwa kwa roli, sasa wakati tulishuka town, ndo sasa wakaendelea kutupiga wakatusurround. After kutusurround sasa ikakuwa mob.
There is a question I asked. How come bandits were able to kill 21 police officers, 21 armed police officers? Remember, they were armed and they were going to retrieve a van that had earlier been vandalized by bandits. So the question is, how? Now, what we gathered that time, wakati tulikuwa huko, was that these were young police officers and a good number had never been assigned in a hostile environment such as Tiati, such as Capedo. Those are hostile environments where we have valleys, we have rifted valleys and bandits hideouts. So the terrain is also very tough. So a majority of these police officers had no experience. They actually didn't know what was coming their way. And when it calls for action, they didn't know what action to take. That is why they didn't know that they were running into an ambush, a valley. And there are several valleys in Baringo and Turkana counties. You don't just go in. Valleys like Baragoi, valleys like now the Kasarani Valley, like Ngelecha Valley. You don't just walk in. It's a death trap, and it has been. Remember, the killing of the 21 police officers is not the only killings that has happened in Capedo. Even more recently, as even last year, police officers were still killed in Capedo. And so that time, when these police officers were attacked, bullets, gunshots were raining in in quick succession. Remember, the bandits were like above them a little bit on the hills, and these guys were down in the valley. So they were just aiming at them, killing one by one. And it was sad. For some of us who just went there, hiyo wakati tulikuwa unaona una paint the picture, because there were cartridges and they were, so the cartridges in the lorry showed that the police were trying to fight back. But it seemed it was too little, too late. And when the horror was done, these guys just came and burnt the lorry, burnt everything that was there. And that is how horrific it was. Now look at this picture here. This is Michael Njenga. With his binoculars, he tries to look at the surroundings to see where we are and if we are facing any danger. Remember, tumejipeleka tu. Hatuna polisi, hatuna bunduki, hatuna nini. My job as a journalist is to tell the story as it is. So tungebaki Kapedo Center huko, we could not have shown these pictures, and people would not have seen the magnitude of the attack. Ilikuwa mbaya. Ilikuwa mbaya. And many times I've been in Kapedo, I've gone to Kapedo many times, and whenever I go there, I always remember that day. I always remember that day. It was sad. It was sad. So, as I had said earlier, the negligence of senior police officers sending young police officers from Eldama Ravine. Some of them were coming, they had been stationed in Eldama Ravine since their deployment from Kiganjo. Walikuwa wamepelekwa pale Eldama Ravine. So kutoka Eldama Ravine, we can't compare Eldama Ravine na Tiati na Kapedo. Tiati na Kapedo ni tough terrain, bandits infested. That way in Kapedo, actually, I remember there was a day I covered a story about jungle policing when I was still at NTV. So kuna wakati tulienda kutembelea, they asked to our anti-stock theft unit. Wanakuwa pale kichaka pale, watu wana camp yao pale kichaka. So tukaenda tukirudi, I remember we passed a valley. And imagine our police officers tuko tumewabeba, but they changed their cloth, wakavaa civilian. Because if they were in uniform, then we could have been in danger. This is how we could have been in danger. Huko adui because they call them adui, the two communities, because they are always worrying. So for the bandits, adui were Pokot bandit, ni someone from Turkana or someone in police uniform. And adui number 3 is anyone carrying the two. You get? So if the police officers wangekuwa wamevaa uniform, they could have put us in danger. So walivaa raia na ni wa asked, lakini tukafika tu place ingine like a valley, and they kept quiet, silent. They didn't talk. Actually ni sisi tulikuwa tunaongea. Then all of a sudden pia tukaona hawa jamaa wamenyamaza and no one is saying anything. So we also decided to keep quiet. Tukaenda tukapita kwanza what they call Alaga, dry river bed. Then everyone was quiet. So tukipita tukavuka the other side. One of the police, these are special forces by the way, as to as special forces of the GSU, anti-stock theft unit. Ya kazi yao ni kupambana na wezi wa mifugo. Lakini wamenyamaza, wamefunga mdomo, wamenyamaza hivi. So tukifika pale mbele wakituambia sasa hapo hata muti hivi inaweza kuwa ni mutu. Wakasema sometimes wanajificha kwa hizi miti zinakaa zimesplit hivi, amekelea tu hapo bunduki. Akikuona in uniform ta. Yeah? So that is why walinyamaza. and imagine wananyamaza na wako in raya kama sisi. So that place, banditry, is one hell of a problem. Nikiwa tu pale nikachunguza some few things, unapata these bandits wako like realizing how they get the bullets, how they get the guns. Unapata msee ako na new gun, machine gun mpya. So these guys wanaletewanga na our leaders wa huko, wanawekewa kwa maji, mitungi ya maji hizi za misaada na chakula, wanawekewa pale bunduki bana. So nyinyi mnafikiria ni chakula inapelekwa, lakini wenyewe wanajua bunduki zinaletwa pale. That is why disarmament inafanyika leo, kesho jamaa wako na bunduki zingine mpya na walipeana risasi, because you remember that the massacre of the 21 police in 2014. The order was given by the president himself.
Na mimi nashukuru wazee wanasema niwapatie wiki mbili watarudisha hizo silaha walichukua, na najua nia yao ni njema, lakini nataka niseme hivi, mimi silaha hizo ambazo zilichukuliwa kutoka hawa askari, mimi sitaki kungojea wiki mbili, nataka zirudishwe leo. Lazima mnajua wako wapi.
Tukakupigia simu, ushike simu. So ika happen hivyo, unaona Michael Jenga akacheza nayo twa. So wase walileta hizo guns, they brought the guns, but it gave me a different perspective, that all these bandits are known by the people. They are leaders, they are known by the community members. So if you want to deal with banditry in this case, then you have to go to the community, you have to go to the people, and you will find the guns and you will find the bandits. Because I know even the current cabinet secretary, Professor Kindiki, has been battling bandits, but the bandits are with the communities. So you deal with the community, and one biggest challenge there is lack of education. You help those guys educated. It will take a long time, because those who are bandits already will not go back to school, but it means there is a generation that will be born that will have education and will have opportunities. That should be the future in terms of fighting banditry.
Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope and pray that you're fine wherever you are. Welcome again to this platform, and I kindly request that you, before you watch this video, kindly hit the subscribe button, and I thank you for that. Now, that aside, the United Nations Security Council passed a vote approving a Kenya-led delegation to maintain peace to fight the violent gangs in Haiti. That was on October 3rd, 2023. The United Nations Security Council voted 13 in favor of the decision and 2 absentees represented by China and the Russian delegation. Now, the United Nations Security Council voted to approve Kenyan government to send soldiers, and part of the delegation was to be Kenyan soldiers and other soldiers from other countries. And this mission was welcomed by the Kenyan government. In fact, more pro-government leaders in Kenya praised the decision by the United Nations Security Council to approve Kenya's involvement in Haiti. But I also said on a discussion on this platform that the US government approved 14 billion Kenya shillings to support the Kenyan-led delegation army to Haiti to fight violent gangs. I have no problem with the money, and I have no problem with the decision by the UN Security Council. But I tend to ask a question. Did the United Nations Security Council conduct a background check of the Kenyan security before approving their engagement in Haiti? Because the last time I checked, the Kenyan security forces were overridden, overburdened, and overpowered by bandits in the country. The United Nations Security Council allowed, let me say, a delegation of security officers, a delegation of army officers who are unable to fight bandits. And these security officers have been sent to fight violent gangs in Haiti. I have watched very many videos of the violent gangs in Haiti, and from what I know, from what I have seen, they are not just a walk in the park. These are gangs, just as the name states. They are gangs with very powerful weapons. Bandits in my country, Kenya, bandits most often they use AK-47 and arrows and spears. Arrows mostly. Arrows and AK-47. If a group of untrained individuals fighting using arrows and AK-47 have overpowered the Kenyan security forces, imagine what the violent gangs in Haiti can do. The bandits operating in northern Kenya have killed several civilians and several security forces, several police officers. I just want to take you to a preview of what the bandits in Kenya have done to the Kenyan security forces. Just a preview for us to understand what the Kenyan security forces are. Now, on 14th February 2023, there was a report on Channels Television that more than 100 civilians and 16 police officers had lost their lives at the hands of marauding bandits and livestock rustling terrorists in the northern Rift Valley region of Kenya in the past 6 months. This was a statement that was given by the Interior Ministry, the Minister for Interior, that was Kithure Kindiki. He said that more than 100 civilians and 16 police officers had been killed. And this was February 2023. More than 100 civilians and 16 police officers had been killed. The same Kenyan army, the same Kenyan police officers fighting bandits. On 27th February 2023, the same was reported that more than 100 civilians and 16 police officers had been killed by bandits. On 5th May 2015, there was a report that at least 47 people had been killed by bandits these bandits attacked a village on the border between northern Kenyan counties of Turkana and East Pokot, and these bandits killed at least 47 people. On 25th September 2022, there was a report on a local news media, that is Capital FM Kenya, that 8 police officers, 2 civilians, and a chief had been killed in Turkana bandit attack. 25th September 2022, there was a report that 8 police officers, 2 civilians, and 1 chief had been killed by bandits in Turkana. This was 25th September 2023, after the general elections and after the current government had been elected. Then on 14th February, on 12th February 2023, NTV Kenya, which is a local news outlet in Kenya, reported that in the last 40 days, 27 people, including 3 police officers, had been killed by bandits. Then there was another report that was published on Standard Media that at least 22 police officers and 3 civilians were feared dead following an early morning attack by suspected Pokot bandits in Turkana East. That was on it was reported 8 years ago. That is around 2015. Yeah, 2015. And in that massacre, 21 administration police officers were killed, incapable. I have just given you a brief preview of what the bandits are doing to the Kenyan police officers. And just from that preview, we can see that the Kenyan police officers are incapable of fighting bandits in the country. The Kenyan police officers are incapable of maintaining peace and security in the country from mere bandits. And I have said that these bandits, they use weapons such as AK-47 and AK-47 and arrows. Remember, arrows were used long time ago, the pre-colonial times. The same people who are using arrows, the Kenyan police officers cannot fight. And these police officers watch as these bandits kill innocent civilians each and every day. The same police officers who are incapable of fighting bandits in the country, in Kenya, have been sent to Haiti. The UN Security Council approved that Kenyan-led delegation will go to Haiti and try and maintain peace, fight violent gangs in Haiti. And these violent gangs, they are not using arrows. They are not using spears. They rarely use AK-47. I just want to check which weapons the violent gangs in Haiti use. Just to tell you what Kenyan police officers are up to. Now, I've just bumped into a report on AP News, and this report says that modern weapons being smuggled to Haiti from the United States. And from what I am seeing, they are not ordinary weapons, that some of them have not even seen in Kenya. According to this report, popular handguns selling for $400 to $500 at federally licensed firearms outlets or private gun shows in the US can be resold for as much as $10,000 in Haiti. And these high-powered rifles such as AK-47s, AR-15s, and Galils are typically in higher demand from gangs in Haiti. And these weapons, to be sure, they are not used in Kenya. Some include 50 caliber sniper rifles, 308 rifles, and even belt-fed machine guns. Now, I just want to ask a very simple question. If Kenyan police officers are unable to fight bandits in the country, they are unable to fight bandits who are commonly using AK-47s and arrows, will they fight the violent gangs in Haiti with modern weapons? I tend to believe that the Kenyan government was just up for the money. They saw the 14 billion offer from the United States and they said that this one we must seize. For those who know my country, Kenya, you will understand that Kenya is a very corrupt country. In fact, one of the high-ranking officials in the country was quoted saying that the current administration, the current government, is a government of shareholders. They are a government of shareholders and a government of businessmen concerned with making profits. At the back of their minds, I know they know that the mission in Haiti will be unsuccessful. Kenyan soldiers cannot fight the violent gangs in Haiti. The Kenyan-led delegation cannot restore peace in Haiti. And the Kenyan-led delegation of soldiers cannot overpower the gangs in Haiti. The Kenyan soldiers must know that they are going to Haiti simply because of the money. The Kenyan government was overwhelmed by the 14 billion that the United States offered to support the mission. The Kenyan government knows very well that its soldiers cannot fight the violent gangs in Haiti. All that was on the table was the 14 billion, and this 14 billion convinced the Kenyan administration that they can freely send their soldiers to Haiti. I saw a report on our local dailies that on The Nation that the court extends order barring deployment of Kenyan police officers to Haiti. And in this report, a Kenyan court on Tuesday, which is Tuesday, extended an order barring the government from deploying hundreds of police officers to Haiti on a UN-backed mission aiming to pacify the troubled Caribbean nation. Now, I think the Kenyan courts also understand the incapability of the Kenyan soldiers, the Kenyan administrative officers, to fight the violent gangs in Haiti. And they understand that the country is in a dire situation. The northern part of Kenya is ruled by the bandits, and the priority should be maintaining security internally. If Kenya is unable to maintain security internally, how sure can we be that it can maintain peace and bring stability in Haiti? If Kenyan government is incapable of fighting Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group terrorizing the northern part of Kenya, how sure can we be that the same government can restore peace in Haiti? The answer to these questions is very simple. The Kenyan government is incapable of restoring peace in Haiti. The Kenyan police officers are incapable of restoring peace and bringing stability in Haiti. All that the Kenyan government wanted was to pick and pocket the 14 billion that the United States government offered. If the Kenyan government is serious that it wants to send soldiers to Haiti, then it must first address the two sources of threats in the country. That is, bandits in the northern part of the country and Al-Shabaab in the northern part of the country.